I've just been working a lot. And people are beginning to know who I am when I walk down the street. I really didn't know the impact of the show until...
After the final curtain fell on Sanford and Son, his career took an unexpected and troubling turn. The career that seemed unstoppable collapsed suddenly. The money vanished and Hollywood doors shut. It was a classic from grace to grass story. What really happened to Demond Wilson? And what dark and heartbreaking truth was happening behind the cameras all along? Join us as we uncover the full truth behind the cameras. The kid from Harlem who was born for the spotlight. Demond Wilson was born in Georgia, but it was New York City that made him who he was. His family relocated to Harlem when he was still a young boy, and growing up in that neighborhood during the 50s and 60s was its own kind of education. People learned how to read a room fast and how to hold their own. They learned that personality was a survival tool, not just a gift, and Wilson had all of that and more from an early age. People who knew him as a child have described him as someone who was always performing, always on, and always making the people around him laugh without any effort at all. Before television, Wilson had a life that most people would find surprising given how polished he appeared on screen. He reportedly served in the United States Army in the late 60s, and the discipline of military service left a mark on the way he approached work. When he returned to civilian life, he threw himself into the entertainment world with a seriousness that set him apart from other young actors who were coasting on natural talent. Wilson studied his craft. He did theater. He took any role he could get and treated every small part like it was the lead. His early television appearances were unremarkable on a resume, but meant everything at the time. Guest spots, day player roles, and small parts on various network shows. He appeared on All in the Family in a guest capacity, and that alone was a significant achievement for a young black actor in the early 70s. Being on the set of one of the most watched shows in the country exposed him to how top-level television production actually worked. In 1972, producer Norman Lear was working with Bud Yorkin on an American version of the beloved British sitcom Steptoe and Son. The premise was simple but powerful: a cantankerous older man and his loyal, frustrated son running a junk dealership together. For the American version, they would set the story in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles and cast the leads as black men. For Fred Sanford, the older schemer, they turned to Red Fox, who was already a legend on the black comedy circuit with decades of raunchy stand-up behind him.
Hey, Pop. Do my cheeks look flushed? Huh?
For Lamont, the son, they needed someone different, someone warm, someone real, someone who could absorb Fox's chaos and turn it into something emotionally true. They chose Demond Wilson. Sanford and Son premiered on NBC on January 14, 1972, and within weeks it was clear this was not just another sitcom. The show moved with a lived-in energy that felt completely unlike anything else on television at the time. Wilson was 25 years old. The whole industry was watching, and everyone who saw those first episodes and assumed this young man from Harlem was about to have the kind of career that people write books about. But when a show rewrites the rules of black television and becomes one of the highest-rated programs in America, what happens to the young star at the center of it all? And if everything looked perfect on screen, what was unfolding behind it? The show that rewrote the rules of black television. Sanford and Son did not arrive quietly. By its second season, it was the second highest-rated program on all of American television, trailing only All in the Family. It meant a lot back then. A show about two black men running a junkyard in Watts was pulling in ratings that most major network programs could only dream about. Network executives had spent decades operating on the assumption that black-led shows could not attract mainstream white audiences in large numbers. Every Friday night, Sanford and Son made a lie out of that assumption in front of millions of people. The chemistry between Red Fox and Demond Wilson was the beating heart of the show, and it was not something that could have been manufactured or engineered. Fox played Fred Sanford as a scheming, melodramatic, impossibly lovable old man who faked heart attacks whenever his son challenged him, insulted his daughter-in-law Esther with spectacular creativity, and somehow remained completely endearing through all of it. Wilson played Lamont as the son who could see exactly what his father was doing every single time and stayed anyway. That is the whole emotional engine of the show right there. the love that survives full knowledge of someone's flaws. Wilson helped keep things organized on set, which balanced out Fox's more unpredictable style. Fox was known for making up lines and taking scenes in surprising directions. To work well with someone like that, you need a partner who can keep up.
You mean your x-ray turned out all right?
That's right, and it would have been all right the first time if I had remembered to take this thing off.
And Wilson was just that. People who worked on Sanford and Son have said that Wilson was always ready, reliable, and eager to help his co-star shine even more. This kind of kindness is not very common in Hollywood. The cultural impact of the show went beyond ratings. Young black men across the country saw Lamont Sanford and recognized something real. He was a man who worked hard, who wanted more for himself, who was not ashamed of where he came from, and who loved his difficult father without reservation. That combination of ambition and loyalty, intelligence and humor, was not something that television had offered black audiences at that level before. Fan mail poured in. Magazines put Wilson on their covers. He was not just a television character, he became a cultural figure. The show ran for 6 seasons in its original format. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But underneath the surface of that success, a pressure was building on set that would eventually crack the whole foundation wide open. And the fault line, as it so often is in Hollywood, ran directly through a paycheck. The walkout that nearly destroyed the whole show. By 1974, Red Fox had become one of the most recognized faces in America, and he knew exactly what that was worth.
Pop, since you was 10.
He had spent 30 years grinding through clubs and comedy records and R-rated party albums before Sanford and Son turned him into a mainstream television star. The money he was earning from the show, reportedly around $25,000 per episode, was real money. But Fox had done his homework, and what he found when he compared his deal to what white stars of comparable shows were making was not something he was willing to quietly accept. The gap was significant, and Fox believed it was intentional. He asked to renegotiate, but the producers at Tandem Productions and the network did not agree. The discussions went on longer than anyone wanted, and in the end, Fox did something that surprised everyone in the industry. He left. He did not leave dramatically. He left for good. He signed with ABC to host his own variety show called The Red Fox Comedy Hour, and left Sanford and Son behind. What happened next put Demond Wilson in an impossible position. The producers decided to keep the show alive in some form, retooling it under the title The Sanford Arms, and later simply Sanford, attempting to carry the junkyard premise without either of its original leads.
This tag is not to be removed under penalty of law.
Wilson himself allegedly grew frustrated during this period, feeling that decisions were being made about the show's direction without adequate consultation with him. After all, he was the man who had been carrying half of the show since day one. Sources close to the production suggested that Wilson felt disrespected and undervalued in the shuffle, though the complete picture of those negotiations has never been fully made public. Wilson left the show before Fox came back, and the audience noticed the difference. The ratings for the new versions were not as good as before. There is a special kind of chemistry that develops between two actors who work together for years, and it can't just be paused and picked up again like nothing happened. When Fox returned and the original show was brought back, it started up again, but it never ran as smoothly as it did before. The trust between the production team and its stars was tested in ways that left lasting effects. The show continued, and there were still good episodes and moments of real brilliance between Fox and Wilson. However, Fox's departure changed the show's internal culture in a way that good writing couldn't fix. For Demond Wilson, this experience revealed something important and unsettling about how the industry saw him. He had been a co-lead on one of America's biggest shows, but when the crisis happened, he was not treated like someone whose opinion mattered. This was a lesson he would remember. So when Hollywood promised him a future after the show ended, was it ever really planning to deliver, or had the decision about his limits already been made? The career that Hollywood refused to give him. When Sanford and Son concluded its run in 1977, Demond Wilson was 31 years old. He had spent 5 years as the co-lead of a top 5 network television program. He had proven he could anchor a show, carry the weight, deliver comedy, and hold his own opposite one of the most naturally gifted performers in the business. By every conventional measure of how Hollywood is supposed to work, his phone should have been ringing off the hook. Producers should have been lining up with scripts. Networks should have been offering development deals. The career runway ahead of him should have looked long and wide and clear. However, it did not. He did land one significant opportunity. In 1979, CBS gave him his own sitcom called Baby, I'm Back. The premise was solid. Wilson played Raymond Ellis, a man who abandoned his family years earlier and then returns trying to win them back. Only to find that his wife has gotten on just fine without him and has a new man in her life. There was real comic and dramatic potential in that setup, and Wilson was well suited for it. The show had warmth and a good cast around it, but it lasted only one season. CBS pulled it before it had a genuine chance to find its audience, and the reasons given were ratings and scheduling, which any Hollywood insider would know are the standard explanations that producers reach for when they do not want to have a harder conversation. People close to Wilson at the time say he felt the network never fully got behind the show, that decisions around budget, promotion, and scheduling made success nearly impossible, regardless of how good the performances were. Only those in the room can say how true that is. What isn't in dispute is that the show was canceled, and the leading role that should have launched the next chapter of his career turned out to be his last. What followed was a pattern familiar to many black actors of that era. The show ends, and they simply vanish from the industry. Cable television was breaking up the audience that network sitcoms used to depend on, and the working-class black family sitcom, which Wilson had perfected, was not as important as it had been in the early 70s when Norman Lear changed television. The opportunities for Wilson's unique skills had become smaller, and they were not going to get bigger again by themselves. What makes Wilson's career stand still during this time especially noticeable is what was going on around him.
Now, I came home tonight and there was none. Now, what do we learn from this little lesson?
Actors from similar shows were finding new chances, getting development deals, making movies, and starting production companies. The Hollywood system was helping some people but not others, and the pattern of who was getting help and who was not random. Wilson was talented enough. He had proven that. What he did not have, allegedly, was the right relationships, the right representation, and the right set of doors being opened for him at the right moment. And in Hollywood, those things matter as much as talent, sometimes more. The dark years that almost destroyed him completely. Demond Wilson had spoken about his struggles with substance overuse in interviews over the years, and he did not do it in a subtle way. He had been blunt about it. The combination of a stalled career, the fading of the kind of fame he had known, and the specific psychological pressures that come with being a recognized face whose professional phone has gone quiet, created conditions that Wilson was not built to handle alone. He turned to and when asked about it, he mentioned it in interviews, without asking for sympathy, but without running from the truth either.
Maybe we could get together and pack a little picnic basket and ride up the coastline a ways with the wind in our hair.
Going from major television star to someone the industry has simply moved past is not something you can easily explain to people who haven't lived it. He was the same person with the same talent. But Hollywood doesn't ease people out. The work stops coming, the calls dry up, and the people who once needed you in every room move on to the next thing without looking back. Wilson was left to figure out what his life looked like without any of it. When everything stopped and money stopped coming in, he became over-dependent on consuming harmful substances. This helped fill that gap for a time. Then they stopped filling it and started taking over, and what began as a way to cope became something he had to survive. Allegedly, there were years in the early 80s when Wilson was genuinely difficult to reach, when people who cared about him could not get through to him in any way, and when the trajectory of his life looked genuinely alarming to those watching from close range. Former associates and colleagues have described in various accounts how deeply worried they were during this stretch. Whether the full picture of what those years looked like will ever be documented in detail is uncertain. But what Wilson himself has made clear across multiple interviews is that this was the lowest point of his life, and that if something had not changed, the ending would have been very different. What changed everything was faith. Wilson didn't describe a slow drift toward belief or some philosophical reckoning. He described something sudden. He became a born-again Christian and was ordained as a minister. And by his own account, it wasn't a new identity layered over the old one. It was a complete break. He didn't leave entertainment reluctantly. He left with a sense of direction. Ministry became his work, his community, and his reason for getting up in the morning. For the better part of 2 decades, Demond Wilson, the television star, was gone. In his place was Reverend Wilson. The total change in his life surprised those who knew him from the Sanford and Son days. And this was not just a celebrity trying to make a comeback. There were no press releases or stories about his return. He just stopped being one person and became another.
It's another thing, Pop. Now, you know you got a plot right next to Mom's. Now, you getting married again. How's that going to work out for later?
He led a church, and he helped people in his community, and he lived a quiet life. For someone who used to be recognized everywhere, the quietness of his new life was a choice he made on purpose. Even though it was hard, that choice was what kept him alive. But what makes a man walk away from fame without looking back, and how much did it cost him to do it? When the applause faded and the cameras turned off, was Demond Wilson stepping into peace, or into a financial storm he didn't even see coming? The money that was gone, before he even noticed. The financial story of what happened to Demond Wilson after Sanford and Son is one of the most painful parts of his entire history, and it is also one of the most familiar to anyone who has studied how Hollywood has treated black performers across generations. Wilson was earning real, significant money during the run of the show. A co-lead on a top 5 network sitcom for 5 years is not a minor financial achievement. By any reasonable outside estimate, he should have left that period with enough financial foundation to carry him through a difficult stretch of career uncertainty without catastrophic consequences. That is not what happened. The contracts Wilson signed were negotiated when he had little leverage and lacked access to the kind of high-powered legal representation that black entertainers would increasingly secure in later years. Those deals were structured in ways that heavily favored the studios and networks, particularly when it came to syndication, the revenue generated when a show moves into reruns, local broadcasts, and eventually cable and streaming. Sanford and Son ran everywhere for decades. The money it made was substantial. How much of that money actually reached Demond Wilson is a different story entirely. This was not just a problem that affected Wilson alone. Red Fox, who was very famous and had a lot of earning power, also faced serious financial issues when he died in 1991. The IRS had placed liens on his assets, which means they had a legal claim to his property due to unpaid taxes. Additionally, it was reported that his personal belongings were sold at auction to pay off his debts. The same entertainment industry that had helped make Fox one of the most well-known entertainers in America did not create the financial support systems that could have protected him as he grew older. Similarly, Wilson's situation, although perhaps not as severe as Fox's, followed a comparable pattern. The financial safety net that should have been available to him was not enough to help him through the difficult times he faced. There is also the question of what happened to his money during the substance overuse period. Wilson did not go into significant detail about the financial specifics of his worst years, and it would be unfair to speculate beyond what he has said himself.
I'll leave the door open for you in case you change your mind.
You can close it. I ain't gonna change my mind. Good night, Jackie.
But it does not take much imagination to understand that a period of serious dependency issues, combined with a declining income from a stalled career, combined with contract structures that were not generating the residual income they arguably should have been, creates a financial picture that can deteriorate very quickly. By the time Wilson was building his new life as a minister, he was not doing so from a position of financial comfort. His financial experience, along with those of Fox and many other black entertainers from that time, shows a big problem in the entertainment industry that has lasted for many years. The talent that made these shows worth billions of dollars in cultural and commercial value was not properly protected by the legal and financial systems that were meant to help them. Wilson played a key role in making Sanford and Son one of the most loved and valuable shows in television history, but the rewards he received did not match what he contributed. This is not just unfortunate, it is a clear injustice. But if the injustice was so clear, what does it mean when the man at the center of it chooses silence over revenge and faith over fame? And after losing so much to an industry that failed to protect him, how did Demond Wilson rebuild a life on his own terms? The long, quiet road back and the legacy he built. Demond Wilson did not completely disappear from public life. He became less visible and chose when he wanted to be seen by the public. During the 80s and most of the 90s, he lived a quiet life. He managed his ministry in California, worked with his church community, and created a life that was separate from fame, television, and the entertainment industry that had both helped him and, in many ways, let him down. People who watched Sanford and Son as kids sometimes wondered what happened to Lamont. The answer was that he was in a church in California, doing meaningful work that he believed in, and he didn't really care if Hollywood noticed he was gone. For years, something between relief, recognition, and nostalgia that can't be manufactured. Wilson got that reaction every time. The charm, the warmth, and the understated comic timing that made Lamont Sanford so endearing, none of it had left him. If anything, the years had settled it deeper.
You really are chicken, aren't you? You want to open your own mail here.
Red Fox passed away on October 11, 1991, after suffering a serious heart attack while he was on the set of a new sitcom called The Royal Family. At the time, he was 68 years old. The sadness surrounding his death was made even worse by the way it happened. Fox collapsed during a rehearsal, and some of the cast members initially thought he was just pretending to have one of his famous fake heart attacks, but unfortunately, that was not the case. Demond Wilson, who worked closely with Fox, spoke about the loss of his friend with a deep sense of grief that was clearly genuine and heartfelt. Despite any difficulties they may have had during their time on Sanford and Son, Wilson always referred to Fox as someone he truly loved and respected. Health issues became a significant part of Wilson's life as he got older. These health challenges, along with the financial struggles he faced after leaving television and the complicated feelings that come from remembering his past fame while dealing with a very different life now, are topics Wilson has discussed openly. He has been more honest about these issues than many people in similar situations might feel comfortable being. Despite everything he has gone through, he does not hold any bitterness. Instead, he worked hard to create something meaningful. Demond Wilson married Cicely Johnston, and together they raised 6 children. That family is the legacy he speaks about with the most pride. Not the show, not the fame, not the ratings. The children, the marriage, the congregation, the work that never made the news. For a man who spent his most visible years performing for millions of strangers, there's something fitting about that. The second half of his life was spent building things that actually belonged to him, and that isn't a consolation prize. It's just a different kind of success, and arguably a more lasting one. The story of Demond Wilson is ultimately a story about what Hollywood does with the people who give it their best years, and what those people find when they look beyond Hollywood for something worth building. He gave the world Lamont Sanford. He gave the world 5 years of some of the funniest, warmest, and most human television that American audiences have ever seen. And then he gave himself something quieter and more permanent. Both of those things are true, and both of them matter. Do you think Hollywood failed him? Or did he have the kind of success that Hollywood was never equipped to understand at that time? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.